welcome everybody. Today we have with us Olympian 2:28 marathoner, third place Boston marathoner, finisher in 2018, registered dietitian, Canada's marathon mom, and I could probably go on for a while, Krista Duchene. So welcome, Krista. Just to update everybody who's joined, how's it going on?
Good. Yeah, it's going well. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so we'll get into some rapid fire questions, which in some cases it tends to be rapid fire, other cases they tend to explain their answers, both of which are fine. So what's your most memorable race?
I'd have to say the Olympics, just because I, after the race ran into the arms of my family, and I don't think I could ever beat that.
Fair enough. What's the race you'd most like to forget?
Probably London in 2017 because of my stomach issues. I was pretty nasty.
Okay, we don't need to hear any more about that one.
That's good.
What's your favorite workout?
It's interesting. I think I used to say my tempo treadmill workouts, but now since I've been with Reed, I think I've enjoyed the road progression runs. I think it's something where I've grown a bit more and it's become one of my favorite ones.
Okay, what's your least favorite workout?
I don't think I have a least favorite one. Like maybe the least favorite part would be like doing strides at the end of a long run because you're just like, oh my goodness, I don't know if I can do that. So I would say that.
Great, I agree. What's your favorite shoe?
Okay, so the Triumph 17 and the Kinvara, I would say,
Yeah.
are my two kind of basic shoes. And then, of course, I'd have to say the Endorphin Pro that we're so excited about being out now.
So do you do the Triumph for the longer runs and the Kinvara for kind of a workout and then the Pro for racing? Is that
That's
kind
right.
of your lineup? Okay.
Yeah.
And then I know the answer to this one already, but if you could do another Olympic sport, what would it be?
Well, you're going to think hockey, which
Yeah.
is a good answer, but like long track speed skating would be cool too, because that could combine them. But I would want a little bit of a longer distance. So, yeah, I guess I have to say hockey.
So on the speed skating front, I actually coach short track speed skating.
Ah,
So, if you ever want to try it, I can give you some tips. Uh,
sweet. Can I wear hockey skates?
you you can to a certain extent, and then no. Okay, so let's go into some longer answer ones. Those rapid fires were very rapid. Uh, Unlike many runners, you took an extraordinary long road to the top of the sport. So you played hockey in university, like we talked about, and then you debuted in almost a similar time to my debut, actually in 3:28 in 2002, and then 14 years later, you were an Olympian. So can you walk us through that process? And when did you really see that the Olympics come into the frame of mind?
Okay, well, I guess I could go back to when I was a kid. I loved to do every sport that I could. And then in high school, my two most favorite ones that I think I enjoyed the most and was the best at were hockey and running. So, my story that I tell a lot of people is when I was young and had a lot of energy in the house, my mom used to lock me out and make me run laps until she let me back in. So it's no surprise that I'm still running to this day with lots of energy. But at the end of high school, I had to make a choice between hockey or running as my main sport. And at the time, I was more passionate about hockey. So Guelph had a good nutrition program. They had a good women's ice hockey program. So I chose that school to go to and did well when I was there. And then I just ran on the side just to stay fit and just because I enjoyed it. And then when I retired from hockey, I got back into running just for the fun of it. I had the idea that, hey, it'd be fun to run a marathon on my bucket list. So I did that. And yeah, just like most people who are running a race, they wonder why they're doing it because it hurts so much. And as soon as I crossed the line, the first thing I thought was, oh, I can't wait to do that all over again. So I did my second marathon. Oh, I don't remember. I'd have to check. Maybe like the next season. And then I just kept doing, about 2 a year, I guess. And The first time I did the Boston Marathon in 2005, we had our first child about a year after that. So I just kept progressing in terms of taking big chunks off my time. So the time I did Boston, I ran it in 3 hours and 46 seconds. And I remember someone saying, "Oh, you almost went under 3 hours. Don't you wish you did?" And I remember thinking, no, I think I will. I'll come back after this baby, and I think I can do it. So yeah, just kept running marathons, and I hired Nicole Stevenson to coach me. And then I just kept getting better and loving it and decreasing my hours as a dietitian. And I think where I kind of took it to that next level and thought about the Olympics as a possibility is when I applied for my Saucony sponsorship in 2009. So it was in that I wrote down, 2016 is my goal to make it to the Olympics. And then in the meantime, both Lanny and I tried to make it for the 2012 Olympics, which didn't happen, but we were close. And I wore my first Saucony vest in 2010 when I won the national championships in Ottawa. And then just kept progressing from there and made it to the team in Rio.
So a follow-up question: what do you attribute to this progression to? So are you more, is it just consistent mileage, or was there like now there's obviously a level of natural talent, but consistent mileage, natural talent, the types of workouts you're doing, the path the coach put you on, how would you kind of classify like how you improve so rapidly?
I think like one, just the love of the sport, like I said at the beginning, running around the house. And when my mom sent me outside, that was no punishment. I loved it. And so I think that is a big part of it. The challenge of it, just the feel of kind of that physical and mental pain balance that you have to endure. And the consistency for sure. All these years of slowly progressing in terms of my mileage, how it increased a little bit more each year, and changing of coaches. When Nicole Stevenson moved to Montreal, and then we had our third child, it was after that I was coached by Rick Mannon, and then I was coached by Dave Scott Thomas, and now with Reed. So I think with each coach, you learn at that level that you are at. So I think that's also been exciting for me. But I think the bottom line is just the consistency in doing the work, doing the kilometers, and enjoying it, and never feeling like it's a task or something that I have to seek motivation for. Like that's never been an issue to get out the door and go for my run and do a workout or a long run. It's always there.
So we normally have someone on here who couldn't join today, but he asks how much, like, he would say, oh, not everybody can go and do that exact same thing, right? He would be like, oh, obviously natural talent would put a block for some people. So how much of that do you attribute to natural talent, and what advice would you give to people who are maybe in their mid-20s now, or or early 30s, and looking to progress in the marathon, maybe not to the Olympics, but to a competitive point, say for women 240 or for men 220?
Yeah, I mean, for sure, natural talent, I guess, is something that I've had. When I was in high school, I made it to OFSA several years for track, never close to being like, top 6 or top 8. But I enjoyed the work and the talent I had that my coach saw in me at the time. So yeah, for sure, that's something. I mean, we know lots of people who are just like, I just can't run. That's not my thing. And, for the two reasons, they just don't feel they have the talent, and that they just don't really want to. But I think for that person, it's just giving yourself time to progress. Nothing's going to happen overnight. I'm 43 years old, and I ran my first marathon like nearly 20 years ago in 3:28. But just this past fall in Berlin, I still ran a 2:32. So I've gained experience through all these years and maintained good fitness. I've had my injuries and my setbacks and that kind of thing, but I've just enjoyed that process the whole time, and the challenge that the sport has, and learning more. And like, I still feel like I'm learning and loving that. So I guess the key is just consistency and patience, that you can chip away those times and enjoy doing it at the time.
Great. Okay, let's move on a little bit to the Olympics. So it's obviously really special for every athlete. You said it was your most memorable race, partially because your kids were there, but also partially because it's just the Olympics. So you finished 35th, and even higher if you take out the people who are busted for doping. And with the heat and the rain, you ran a pretty good race. So how do you look back on that Olympics? And I've been asking everybody who comes on, can you describe your Olympic experience?
Yeah, it's interesting because usually when I talk about the Olympics, I say there's two things that make it, excellent or exciting or a great memory. And usually you have a good experience when you're there in terms of the Olympic Village, the food, the sleep, the travel, but maybe you don't have a good competition or you have the opposite. So for in my case, I think that I did have both. I had a great experience in the village. I roomed with Natasha Wodak. That went really well. Slept well, travel, no issues there, didn't get sick. And then the race itself went well. So I think I was ranked about 70th and I just was patient. I had trained through all of the heat and humidity that summer so that I wouldn't have the same experience that I had at the World Championships in Russia in 2013, which is when I collapsed in the heat. And I just slowly worked my way through the crowd. And I remember thinking, oh, the Eric Gillis strategy, just plug away, just get that next person, go for the next, go for the next. And I mean, it was the next week that he got 10th, right, or 9th, I
10th,
forget.
10th.
10th, okay. But it was just that, again, kind of back to that message of being patient and letting it come and trusting your fitness and knowing that I was in good condition, especially considering the heat and humidity, because it actually felt a little bit cooler than what I was used to. So that worked to my advantage.
And how about that just Olympic experience as a whole?
Yeah, that was incredible. I mean, I remember sitting in my room and just taking it all in. Like sometimes you are in a big life event and you don't like sit back and breathe and kind of pinch yourself and say, is this really happening? And I remember, I was 39 years old, so I didn't quite fit in with all of the younger ones, which didn't bother me at all. But I remember thinking this is a lifetime opportunity. So looking down and seeing all of these athletes, the best in the world, going to have their dinner and seeing like Simone, the gymnastics competitor there, and like, seeing Usain Bolt and, all of these people that are the best in the world, but just thinking they're just like you and I. They, at the end of the day, they put their head on their pillow when they go to sleep. And so that I wasn't starstruck by any of that, but definitely loved, representing Canada and being proud of that and watching all of the other events that I could and just taking it all in was pretty exciting.
Did you get to go to the opening or closing ceremonies?
So we weren't even there for the opening ceremonies. I watched that at home, but for sure the closing ceremonies, we went to that, and that was pretty neat because I remember we had to wait quite a while until we went out, and I chatted for the longest time with Derek Drouin because we actually grew up in the same area.
Ah,
So that was pretty neat because, he got the gold medal, and my husband and my 3 kids, we actually had tickets to go to the track that night and we watched him win. So it was pretty cool to just be sitting there chatting with him and all these people are coming up to him and wanting selfies and, but he's just down to earth and we're from the same Lambton County and, there we are in Brazil and it was pretty special.
awesome. Okay, moving on to probably the second most special experience in your marathon life is probably, and correct me if I'm wrong, the 2018 Boston Marathon. So it was a race for the ages. It had a little bit of everything, and it had a lot of rain, wind, and I don't know if there was hail or not, but it certainly had the first two. And as we all know, you finished a stellar third place. So I know you've talked a lot about this race before, but can you maybe just do a little bit of talking about the race itself? And I really want to know, what has that race done for your career since?
Okay, so back in 2018, if people can remember, it was a very nasty winter, like a long spring where it was cold and rainy and windy. And I mean, I've got no choice when I do my workouts and get out there to run. Like I drop the kids off at school, I do my training, have some treatment, some downtime for an hour, then I'm picking them up again. So I was out there doing those hard workouts when it was pretty nasty. And so that prepared me for the day. So when we got there, the weather, it was not looking good. And I often say to people that normally at the technical meetings, they'll say, okay, actually when the elites race, it's not going to be as bad as we thought. So they show us like, the hour by hour forecast. But Dave, the race director, he said, this is going to be nasty. Like, I'm not going to sugarcoat this. This is going to be terrible. So that's when, I looked around the room and like, this might work well for me. So that night at dinner, Eric and Reed, who were there, Eric Gillis and Reed Coolsat, we were sitting there having dinner with the other, with my husband and such. And Eric said to me, Krista, I don't think there's going to be many women that are going to like these conditions. And I was like, that's exactly what I'm thinking. So no way was I thinking I would be on the podium though, but woke up that morning, sure enough, it was nasty. I remember going out to the bus and my feet got cold and wet right away. So as soon as I got on the bus, I changed my socks and shoes. And I was like, it's all about starting being warm and not feeling already uncomfortable. Because if you start that race not feeling well, it's going to be nasty. So got on the line, started with the group, and they've got the cameras and everyone because they're broadcasting it. And it was really quick when they did the intros because they wanted us to just get started. So our first kilometer, I think, was like 5 minutes or something. And I remember thinking like, I was right beside Shalane Flanagan and I thought, this is not right. I do not belong beside her. But then I thought, well, I can't really go any slower. Like this is really like slow pace. So anyways, I was with the lead pack for a bit. And then I thought, I'm just going to kind of back off a bit, do my own thing. They were starting into their surges and whatever. So I was behind the lead pack and you can see in the
Yeah.
pictures, my yellow socks, my purple shirt, my white hat. And, that little story, how Shalane went to the washroom, like the porta potty, and came out and caught up with Des. Like that was just right ahead of me. So running the race near to the end, a lot of fans, and it was crazy with the wind and the rain and everything. And two Americans passed me. So that would be Sarah and Rachel. And I remember thinking, oh, like where'd they come from? I've got more to give. I'm going to go with them. So I picked up the pace, chased them. I caught Rachel. And then with like 2K left to go, I just kept, picking it up. And I remember seeing them kind of like pumping their fists. And I thought, why are they doing that? Well, it's because we were passing the people that were to win the race. And I first thought like Shalane, Edna Kiplagat, Molly Huddle. And my first thought was that they went off course. And then I thought, no, like, Shalane knows this course like the back of her hand. And she said that before. She knows where every Dunkin' Donuts is. So anyways, I just knew, okay, this is my day and it's not theirs. And I just remember like focusing on like my hat and being in this tunnel and thinking like I'm in my own movie and I'm watching it at the same time. It was pretty neat. So went down, Yuki was passing me at the same time with the motorcycles and the lights. It was just crazy. Crossed the line. And then Mark, who was one of the volunteers, I said to him, do you know how I placed? And he said, oh, I think you maybe third. I'm like, well, not top masters. My goal was top 3 masters, top 15 overall. He said, no, you were third overall. So then I didn't believe it. And then it wasn't until I saw Eric's agent, Dan, his cell phone in writing. I said, do you mind, can you show me on your phone? Because I didn't believe it. I got to the recovery area. No one was there. And I'm like, where is everyone? My name was written on the board, Des, Sarah, Krista. I'm like, nope, that's someone's handwriting. I don't believe it. So finally, when I saw it, like, on someone's phone from the online results is when I realized I got third.
And what has that race done for your career? I hope you got a big contract offer the next year. And obviously you've been back to Boston the year after, and then you were supposed to go back the year before, and presumably, and we can talk all about appearance fees if you want, but and you won Hockey Night in Canada, for God's sakes, right? Like, how has that elevated you into like this, I don't know, almost this iconic Canadian distance running role?
Wow. Well, I think really for me, it's just kind of another chapter in the book of experiences, and it's a positive one. It's an exciting one, but I certainly have those chapters of being pregnant and having three babies and breastfeeding and getting my body back. Like those are chapters of like having to trust that your body will remember what it needs to do and it will get back into that fitness that it needs while you're like up in the night with a sick kid and those kinds of things. But I've got other chapters too. And I think that it's just maybe one of the most exciting chapters that attracts people to book me to be a public speaker. But I think that where I've grown the most, like especially in my faith, is those dark, dull, difficult moments. So I think this is just one of those times where, when I'm speaking and telling my story about Boston, it's that much more exciting because yeah, in 2014, I broke my leg and, couldn't run obviously for a long time. I had to have surgery for, a screw in my leg. And then in 2013, I collapsed in the world championships. So I think it's just kind of, made me who I am, and also given that story of hope that you never know what's going to happen on any given day.
Great. Okay. So you mentioned like people book you for guest speakers and things, and you started doing some broadcasting with the Ottawa Marathon and the Toronto Marathon. So maybe just give us a behind the scenes on that. I know you, after I talked to Dana Petereski, you messaged me and you're like, oh, well, we knew she was there. There was just no cameras. And so well done. You were on it. Uh, so to maybe just talk a little bit about that. And are you enjoying that side of the sport as well?
Yeah, I like to wear a few different hats. Obviously, the dietitian job and being a mom and running and coaching my daughter's hockey team. And the broadcasting is just another thing that I've enjoyed doing. I always prefer to run the race if I can, as opposed to broadcasting. So sometimes the reason I'm broadcasting is because I've been injured or I've done a different fall marathon. So this past year, broadcasting Dana's when I had just done Berlin. So it made sense to do it then. I enjoy it. I enjoy doing the research and getting to know the different athletes and their backgrounds. And, the day of the race, you really have to be able to obviously speak to anything that can happen on the screen because, both Dana and Trevor weren't even at the
Mhm.
press conference leading up to the race because the fields were so deep, right? So I think, I'm glad that I knew Trevor and Dana's story, obviously, because that's who we, were able to draw attention to them. So I've enjoyed it. It's interesting because I think one of the reasons I like it most is because when I've watched other broadcasts that is all men doing it, I think, why is there not a woman in that broadcast booth?
Mhm.
So that's a main reason, to be honest, why I do it as well, is because I want young girls who want to do something in broadcasting or in sport to be able to look and see, oh, there's a female there, I can do it too. So that's been a big reason for me doing it. And I mean, I love the races that I've done. I mean, it's work. It's, you're sitting there for a long time and, you kind of have to get up and stretch your legs because, with the marathon, anything can happen at any time, yet it can be pretty slow, right,
Mhm.
for viewers to watch. So you need to have content and make it interesting for the viewers. Um, yeah, so yeah, it's just been kind of fun and something that I've enjoyed doing.
I like particularly what you said about women and girls getting into broadcasting, because that's something, although I'm a male hosting this conversation, is important to ensure that there's lots of perspectives, because otherwise you tend to get dialed in a little bit like the US Olympic trials broadcast on the men's race, right? And there's not a lot of coverage. Like they didn't mention Molly Seidel once the whole time. They're, oh, surprise, this person, right? But maybe if we had somebody who actually had a background in women's
Yeah.
running, they would have there would have been more context there. Anyway.
Yeah, that's a perfect example of where are the women
Mhm.
in this. And I know Dina Castor was on course, but I was pretty disappointed that there wasn't a main role or position as a woman in that event.
Yeah. So my last question is, I saw we talked a little bit about this before we went live, but we talked about Saucony, and I pre-ordered the Endorphin Pro. So I'm wondering, can you talk a little bit about the support that Saucony provides you, and how important that is? And then secondly, and maybe we can parse this into two. What's your experience with the Endorphin lineups? now that it's coming out and people get to try it?
So Saucony, I have been with them for like 10 years, I think, now. And I will never represent a brand that I don't believe in just for the sake of, money or a good contract or whatever. So I was thrilled when they, believed in me back in, 2009 when I had just had our second child. And, I think they saw this could be a good investment. And with them, it's been more the relationship that I've enjoyed with them. So I don't feel like anytime I'm doing something for them that it's a task or a chore. So posting anything on social media or whatnot, that's just, who I am, enjoying a company that I'm blessed to be able to represent. So I think it's more that partnership that's been special with them. I mean, money's not everything in terms of maybe what some people get in contracts, but to me, it's that relationship and that mutual respect both ways. So for the shoes, the Endorphin lineup. So there's the Pro, which is the carbon plate, the Speed, and then the Shift. So let's see. So I've actually not done a real race with the Pro yet. I got them just before I was to race the New York City Half Marathon, which was one of the first big races canceled with this pandemic. So, just almost there to be able to use them. But I've done 2 little time trials with them. I did a 10K in April, the weekend I was to do New York, and then again, so that was March, then April, and then I'm going to do another one at the end of May. So I've definitely liked using the Pro and then the Speed. So the Speed doesn't have a carbon fiber plate, the Endorphin Speed. I use them more for intervals, and I really like them as well. I just used them today and had a good workout with them. So, I'm excited that we have this great shoe that Jared Ward, was a part of developing, and Molly Siddall wore them and won the Olympic trials. I mean, not to undermine her as an athlete, but it's pretty exciting that we're competing with other big brands and able to show people that our product is great.
Awesome. And the new environmental, I'm a big into the environmental activism, and they've rolled out an environmental plan recently too, which is awesome.
Yeah, I just got the new shipment of clothes that are in line with that. Yeah, it's great.
Great. Okay, so we've got a few questions in the chat here. David asks, unfortunately it's canceled this year, but how many times have you run the Watford to Alveston 10 miler?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm not even sure. Uh, I'm gonna say maybe only 4 or 5 times. I love the distance. I love the race because I'm from there. I grew up just outside of Alveston. I played hockey in Watford, but I haven't run it that many times for a few reasons. It's like a 2-hour drive to get there. And it's usually just after a spring marathon. So I'm kind of still in that recovery mode of just not really running too much at all. But one of my most, precious memories of that race is running with Rob Whitmill, I think is his last name, and his wife just recently died. So I have a really good picture of the two of us running that race together, and that makes it pretty special, as well as the fact that it's my hometown. But great race.
I've never even heard of it, gotta be honest, but maybe I
It's,
need to seek it
it's
out.
actually been running longer than Around the Bay.
Oh, wow.
Yes. It's a classic. If you talk to old school runners, runners that were in their 70s, Rick Mannon, who coached me in Brantford here, he knew that race. That was a good one to go to.
All right.
Because there's not many 10 milers either, right?
I'll
And
ask my dad
it's
about
from
it.
one town to the next. So you drop off your stuff at the arena in Watford, and then you get the bus back to the start, and then you run to the next town.
Ah, all right. Well, it'd be a good Boston prep because you got to get on the bus and all that
Yeah.
stuff. So
Yeah.
I'll keep that one in mind. Okay. Brian asks, with Reed coaching you now, he's wondering what have been the changes in your training that he's added.
Yeah, that's a good question. And it's something that I love to answer because I have had changes to my training. So I'm doing strides, like more consistently, more regularly, more specific. Like that's a couple times a week. I've changed my strength program. So my weights are a little bit heavier, less reps. Whereas like the last 15 years, I just kind of walked around, did the same routine at the gym. So my weight program is more specific there, and some other exercises that he's given us to do. And then the strength work, the strides. Why am I drawing a blank on the third thing? But
Progression runs.
another, what's that?
Progression runs.
Well, yeah, the workouts are
Yeah.
key. I'm out on the roads doing workouts that I would normally do, on the treadmill. But one complete rest day a week, which I've done for a couple of years now, but he's got me on a 9-day training
Mhm.
program. So basically workout or long run, 2 easy days, workout or long run, 2 easy days. And then the other thing would be, why can't I think of that third thing? Anyways, it'll come to me, but yeah, it's been a great change. Like I said, I feel like I'm still learning, even when I was supposed to do my 20th marathon this spring, but I love that I'm still kind of being challenged and finding out new things about myself. So that's pretty exciting that I've learned more with him.
And obviously, you and Reed have known each other for a while, but how did you come to choosing Reed as your coach?
Well, actually, after the Olympics, I knew it was going to be beneficial for me to kind of take it to the next level with
Mhm.
coaching. And I had asked Dave Scott Thomas and Trent Stellingwerff, Speed River, and I wasn't sure if there would be a fit for me or room for me there. So at the time, I thought, oh, Reed would be good to ask. Now, as it ends up, I was able to go with them. And then obviously, we know things have changed there. And so, Reed said to me back, in the fall when things were kind of falling apart, he said, I can help out if you need. So basically we connected and chatted, and, both lost Dave as a coach. And then I moved forward with him coaching me, and it's been great ever since. And, he's what, 40, I guess he'll be
Mhm.
41 in July. So, we're kind of in the same boat, right? We've got a family, we've got other commitments and things on our plate. And so, with following this 9-day training program from Med Kefleski,
Mhm.
it's good for both of us. So I think that, we kind of benefit both in that sense.
Yeah, the 9-day training's great. The problem for the rest of us is you have you have more flexibility as an elite runner doing it as your job. I wish everyone had that flexibility, and then we could all run 9-day training plans. That would be great.
Yeah, it's a bit different because it's not like every Saturday is your long run. But the third thing is drills. I finally thought of it. I had to draw a blank there. But, things like high knees and butt kicks and hops. I have never done that. And so
Really?
I
Okay.
know, it's crazy. Like, I mean, I did in high school, but, Reed has me doing that a couple of times a week. So that's another thing.
So you've mentioned it a few times, and we don't need to go into this if you don't want to. If you don't want to answer the question, that's fine. But you mentioned Dave Scott Thomas. So what was your reaction when the story kind of came out?
Oh, shock, anger, sadness,
Mhm.
disbelief. Um, Yeah, I mean, a lot of emotions. I mean, I could hardly even talk about it without breaking down. And I know Brian Smiley, our local reporter, I saw him at the arena, and he mentioned it to me, and basically, he knew I needed time before I could speak about it because it. I mean, I still don't know what to say, right?
Yeah.
It's terrible. It's incredibly sad. It's dark. It's all those things. And I mean, I haven't spoken or seen Dave since, and I hope and pray that he's getting help and he's in a better place than he was before. And for Megan for speaking out, and all women who've gone through something like that. We need to make sport a safe place. And one of the things that really hit home for me is, some parents were saying, I don't think I want my daughter to run or do this and that. And I'm like, no, we can't let that happen. We have to, put things in place to to stop this and keep our girls in sport for sure.
Absolutely. Okay, so moving on, and thank you for answering that because I know it's tough. So David asks another question here, and he's interested in the 2012 Olympics. Since so athletics, just for context, Athletics Canada has always, or at least recently, has always required the A standard for the marathon, which for London, I don't forget what it was. It was like 212, or for the men, it was 212. For the women, it was 230, right? 231.
It was 229.
Oh, okay.
55.
Yeah. But you had the B standard, which provides maybe another 6 or 7 minutes and now the B standard is no more, but it provides another 6 or 7 minutes of time to qualify. So first of all, what is the difference between the two? Because I don't think I even understand the concept. And then Dave wants to know whether you think you should have been allowed to run at those Olympics.
Well, okay, so for the marathon for 2012, they didn't use, or Canada wasn't using the B standard for their athletes. I mean, I hope I'm getting all these details right. It seems like it's so long ago. But basically, like when Lanny and I both met in Rotterdam and thought, hey, let's go after that Olympic standard, why not? And we were only like, just over 2 minutes too slow. It was certainly worth the shot. And then we came back and we thought, why is this B standard not something that we can use? But really, once the criteria had been developed, it was too late for us to argue that, right? So, but it was still, worth the shot and that kind of thing. And basically what they said was when the standards came out, that's when you should have argued them and said, where's the B standard? I mean, I might not be getting these details right. Lanny was our, legal representative in this case, but yeah, it was just one of those things that why not try when other events did have the B standard, right? So do I think I should have? I mean, no, because, the criteria is the criteria and we didn't meet it. We were too slow. So that's the way it was, but it sure made it pretty sweet when we were there 4 years later, proving that we belonged to be at the Olympic Games.
Absolutely. Okay, I'll pass it to Ron, who has his hand up.
Hi, Krista. I just wanted to wondering if you can explain your periodizing nutrition, how you implement that throughout your, say, marathon training cycle, and would that be something that would even be beneficial for a rec runner like myself?
Okay, so I do periodize my nutrition when I'm in a marathon build, and it's one of those things that I think you definitely need to be an experienced athlete to implement. And I would recommend that you see a registered dietitian. I am one, but I'm not seeing people privately, but someone like Rachel Hanna would be a really good person, or Megan Keichman if she's seeing people to walk you through that, to know what your history is and, what are you doing now? But basically it's things like, running fasted, right? So waking up in the morning, only having like water or coffee, going out doing a run. Some other things are, if I do 2 runs in a day after a workout, I might not replenish with carbohydrates, but I would go out for my second run feeling a bit depleted, which would mimic how you would feel at the end of a marathon when you're starting to get tired. And then it's also things like being very specific about the amount of grams of carbohydrate per hour that you would consume in your, especially your marathon pace, longer workouts, and training your gut. So it's quite a package deal, I guess. And Trent Stellingworth is the one who, gave me the information to do it. And it's something that I've been doing the last couple of years. Again, because I've been, running for years, and it was something that I think I would benefit from.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So on the dietitian thing, what are a couple points that so for people who maybe like me, who aren't necessarily dialed in on their nutrition and like to eat a lot of carbs and snacks, what are the first few tips that you'd give to somebody, like as if they're trying to dial that in?
Well, I mean, I think it goes down to the basics, and I think of what do I say to all of my patients that come into my office for for diabetes, for blood glucose, or for cholesterol, or for weight. It's how does your plate look at your meals? So you want 50% of your plate to be vegetables and fruit, 25% to be protein, and 25% to be whole grains. So most people aren't hitting those vegetables and fruits at lunch and dinner, and most people aren't getting the protein they need at breakfast. So there's nothing wrong with eating carbs. We need them. That's what gives us energy. But it's also eating nutrient dense foods. So not just filling up on foods that are high in calories and low in your micronutrients, but it's like nourishing foods that are going to stick with you and help your body recover. And I mean, talking about nutrition can go on and on forever, but it's kind of like back to those basics of how I've been successful. It's been years of slowly increasing my mileage and aiming for faster times for longer. And with nutrition, it's, having those basic fundamentals where, I do my periodized nutrition that we just talked about during marathon training for that 12-week build. And then after that, I'm, easing up and having more sweets. And then I get back into another marathon build. So it's kind of that, up and down cycle that I've been doing for all these years, with the basics always being there of my plate looking, those vegetables, fruit, protein, and grain with that glass of milk.
Mm-hmm. I do drink milk too, and I find that helps. So one more nutrition question. Brian asks, he never does his long runs using gels, with the thought that on race day you get a true boost from using those gels. Is that a good idea?
I would definitely say to train with your gels, because that's how you're going to get better, right? I mean, yeah, you definitely want to fuel those runs, because I think you don't know what you're missing when you're just kind of waiting for race day to use those gels. I think that if you can progress in your training and you start to see those specific paced long runs get better because of the use of gels, on race day, those gels are going to continue to help you to perform at your best after you've tapered and everything else. So for sure, I would be using gels or a carbohydrate source of some type. It could be in the form of drinks, but I realize for the average person on race day, they have to kind of stock up their own gels. But definitely, I'd be using them in my training for sure.
So could you almost find a middle ground where your easy long runs are no gels, and then when you do workouts, you're taking the gels so you can practice at pace?
Yeah, like there's some runs where like in the winter I can get away with not even drinking fluids maybe, and not taking any gels during a run. Now in the morning, typically before a long run, I have a plain bagel with honey, so that would help. But I've done fasted long runs as well. But I think that you would definitely benefit from using those gels in your marathon specific long runs, because I never do workouts or specific paced long runs without an energy source.
Great. Okay, so we have a couple more questions. I'll pass it to Teresa.
Hi, Krista. Thanks
Hi.
for doing this. This is really awesome. So I typed it in, but I couldn't find the raise hand feature, so I'll just read it off.
Sure.
I'm so inspired by you and Melindy and Tasha. Like, you're all running so strong into your late 30s and 40s. I'm just a little bit older than you. And I love how you guys are such strong supporters of this sport, like how you're always connecting with your fans about issues that are going on and promoting girls. And so I wanted to know, the first part of my question, who has been or are your greatest inspirations in your running career? And also, do you have space, but do you have a set marathon time you want to hit yet? Or a certain race that you want to do, or a certain place you want to come in at a certain race? So 2 parts. Thanks.
Oh, okay, good. I'll start with that one. So,
okay.
I don't know necessarily that I want to improve on my personal best time. I'm happy with making history that day with Laney back in 2013, beating Sylvia Ruger's 28-year-old record and running that 2:28. That was pretty special in Toronto. And I think that, just like I like wearing a bunch of different hats, I like having kind of different goals with my running. So, I've placed third in Boston. Oh, okay, check that off the list. I've done the Olympics, World Championships. I would love to do the World Majors. So I have yet to do Chicago, New York, and Tokyo. So that will keep me busy for the next couple of years. And, I'm not like Lindsay Tessier owns the Canadian Masters record, but Melinda Almore may be going after that because she broke the Canadian record just before she was 40. So like, I'm not sure that's not really even a goal of mine, to be honest. But I think it's just continuing to do these international races and to travel the world and to see, because I've definitely loved doing that. And also I would like to get into trail racing someday. I've been enjoying the trails lately and some ultra distances. So I think that's been quite exciting, just to still see myself grow and learn more with Reed as my coach now, and, kind of looking down the road at whether other race possibilities are. So yeah, I'll be at it, I think, for a long time. And I like that the way I entered the sport was, as a 3:28 marathoner, and just kind of worked my way up. And so I don't feel like I'm going to just abruptly stop and like announce some retirement, because that's not what this has ever been for me. Okay, so then the first question, you have to remind me what that was.
Who are your greatest inspirations?
Right. Okay, so it's interesting. You'll have to tune into iRun. I'm writing something right now for them, Ben Kaplan, the editor, and I'm going to call it like High Five, like kind of 5 running inspiration. And so I'll tell you, the first person I picked is Jo Paevey, like 5-time Olympian. She's 46 years old. She's got 2 kids. She won the European 10,000 meter championships like 10 months after the birth of her second child. Lovely woman. So, she's someone who, she's older than me. So like, I look at her and I'm like, okay, she's a mom, she's older, she's still at it. And kind of for the same reason, she just loves the sport. I don't think she feels like there's anything she has to accomplish, or there's no pressure on her to do those things. So I think she would be one person. Sylvia Ruger, who's now passed, I think just sharing the same faith as her. She took her running and used it as a platform with, being the record holder for all those years, an Olympian, to serve others. It wasn't about her. She had her start to finish organization. So that's something that I think is so special, because it wasn't about her. It was about how she could use that to help other people. So she's another one. And then you have to tune in. I'm just writing it right now, actually, to see who those others are, because it's not like necessarily famous people, but Susan Spence is one. She's a local mom who is a personal trainer, and I'll talk more about that. But I think I've never had just like one person I've looked up to. I've liked different things about different people and had a nice variety to draw inspiration from.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
That's great.
Okay, and we have Karen who has a question too.
Yeah. Hi, Krista. So by now, you must know many things about running, and you are an inspiration for so many people, especially women and girls. So I'm wondering, has anyone who is not a runner has approached to you asking you for advice on how to start running? And if so, what would be your best advice?
Well, I think, have I had many people ask me? I guess kind of on occasion, maybe. And what I've said to people is just to find that time of day that you make it part of your routine. So if you're a morning person and you like to get up early, go outside and just start with a walk, jog, and then gradually increase the jogging and the running and cut back on the walking. So I think my advice would just be to slowly approach it, not just think, oh, I want to run a marathon in 3 months. Okay, start with a 5K and then work your way up. So Another thing I probably would say to people is to find friends and other people to run with, and a local running group would be helpful. Now, obviously with the pandemic, that's not an option, but there's certainly a lot of online resources and coaching opportunities that people can to learn how to run from online, if that answers your question.
Yes, for sure. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for asking.
Okay, so we have one more question, and then I'll just ask one to finish. So David, with another question, wants to know, would you or have you done a Tough Mudder with your cousin Joe Perry?
No, I have not.
How do you even know that, David? Like, anyway, okay.
Yeah. So Joe is my mom's brother's son, and he's done countless Tough Mudders, world championships, and his signature look is like he's shaves his head and he paints his whole entire face like his wife does it, and so like these really exotic, like crazy designs, and it's pretty cool. But he's a big Tough Mudder, so no, I've not. He would love me to join him, but I don't know, there's some things about the challenge that kind of terrify me, like climbing up walls. I'm not good with heights. I'm not afraid of like getting dirty or mud or even the endurance part, but like when you start getting like wet and cold and like sleeping in the tent and that kind of stuff, I don't know, I've started to, I don't have a great interest in that. It's kind of terrifying.
Okay, fair enough. But you know, Boston was cold and wet. No, I can't. Anyway. So my last question is, I guess, two-parter. One, do you have a running book recommendation for people? And two, so Teresa kind of tapped into this a little bit. What's your bucket list race? You can only choose one.
Okay, so running book. I love Joe Paevey's book, Mom Runs. I forget what it's called. And Becky Wade, Run the World. I'm reading it for a second time now. Have you read it?
I'm glad you said that, because I'm
Okay.
having Becky Wade come on next week
Oh, cool.
for this.
So
Tune in for that.
Yeah, she traveled the world. And like, if you love travel, running, and food, this is the book to read. So I read it. I've got it on my Kindle. I purchased it, and I often read it like just when I'm falling asleep at night. Now, unfortunately, I only get through a few pages because I fall asleep pretty quickly. But I mean, I'm reading it for the second time. And so Joe Paevey's This Mom Runs is another good one. And Meb Keflezighi's book, I've read that. I think I have it here somewhere. But you know what's interesting is I don't really love, this is going to sound bad, but like, I don't really love running books or reading too much about running. To me, it's like, I do that as my job and during the day, and I love it, but like, I want to read about other things.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Run the World next week. Becky Wade is going to be on here on Thursday. So tune in if you want to ask your questions. But what's your, sorry, self-promotion. What's your bucket list race?
Okay, so the other 3 world majors, to complete that. I would love to do a race like in Australia to hit most of the continents. So that would be neat, or New Zealand. Mary Davies is a really good friend of me. She's from there, but she lives in Houston. And like starting getting to ultra races. Like I only know a few of them, so I have that whole world to learn. So I feel like that's a whole list of bucket list items there to check off. But like races where you're like running through the night, like more than 24 hours, I don't think that quite appeals to me yet. So yeah, I mean, the sky's kind of the limit in terms of what's next and what I think I could start to target. But I still do love the road, and I'm not ready to give that up and do well with the marathons.
Great. I think that's a great place to end it. And we're looking forward to seeing what you certainly do next. And hopefully New York is a go-ahead for you in the fall.
Yeah.
And thank you so much for this, Krista. This was great.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Thanks for tuning in.